Hey guys, Elsewhere here. I'm back. This is the third video of the day. I will just put this in a playlist so that I'll probably I'll use the word keto in some way, shape, or form, and that way you'll know what I'm addressing. So in the previous two videos, I talked about different disciplines that I will be incorporating into my life, and those are different activities, foods, and just disciplines that I will be incorporating. I have my top 5 best habits for the best results, and then for the second video I go into some of the foods and nutritional resources that I use while I'm not only while I'm transitioning, but will continue through if I choose to actually, if my goal is actually to go into ketosis. At this point, I'm not, my goal isn't to go into ketosis at this point. My goal is to incorporate practices that I know are tried and true that work for me, and along that path we'll be cutting down on some carbs, changing our macros around a little bit, and that may or may not lead to a full-on ketogenic diet. This plan I'm working on now, I'm not even looking at going into ketosis for approximately 3 months, and I'm basically kind of starting from scratch. So anyway, in the last two videos, I talked about things that I'm incorporating in that are just good, healthy disciplines that have a high effectiveness rate. And now I wanted to talk to you about what my challenges are going to be as far as eliminating carbohydrates out of my life. The foods, not only the carbohydrates, that's really the number one for the macros. I know that I need to reduce my calorie intake, and I know that I'm eating too many carbs. So I'm not trying to cut them out completely. It's just going to be the easiest place for me to eliminate a few extra calories here and there, okay? In the beginning, you have to take it slow, and it's got to be incremental. I'm going to talk more about that later, and I mention it, the baby steps and the footwork that you do in the very beginning. If I could time travel to the future and show you how beneficial these beginner steps are later on in your journey, it's just so valuable, and most of it's fairly easy and doesn't take a ton of discipline, and it's really just kind of you're learning as you're going. The expectations aren't extreme, the bar's not set too high. So anyway, on my theme here, I thought it would be important to not only be honest with you guys about where my starting point is, but also some of the things, that have over the years that have stuck with me, and disciplines that I practice still, like today, that are things you practice in the discipline of a ketogenic diet, right? So where did I fall off the wagon? Where did I keep my discipline? Where am I at? Well, I don't eat wheat. Again, 90% rule. I don't have any allergies. I'm not gluten intolerant. I'm not a lot of things. I just believe 100% that wheat is not meant to be ingested by humans. Look it up, read about it. Eat wheat. I don't care. It's just not for me. That's one of the things about all these different programs. You really got to look at what works for you. What do you want to keep in your diet, and what do you want to eliminate? And you know, it's really on an individual basis. And so, for the first time, I would say for the first time ever in my life, I actually have processed foods that I'm going to have to eliminate. It consists of a gluten-free cheese pizza that it's a nice thin crust. I love the flavor of the crust. The cheese is great. I have served it to other people and they all love it, and it's just super simple. I stick it in the oven, I cut it up and I eat it, and it fills me up, and my system doesn't feel overburdened by actually processing that food, which, you know, it's kind of good and bad, because in a way it makes it easier for me to justify having it or keeping it in my life, because I don't really feel a tax on my system because I decided to have pizza for dinner. High in sodium, processed. It's a mainstream brand. They're not, you know, super eco awesome anything. And I love them, and they are going to go. They're probably going to be the first processed food that I eliminate. And part of that is because they're probably the worst processed food that I keep in my house. They're probably the worst for me, and they're actually the least favorite of the 3 that I have. Yeah, I only have 3. Okay. The second one is, well, they're both kind of the same thing. I have one that's a frozen single serving pad thai, and it's dairy and gluten free. This was from a time when I was really working from a deficit. I was really, I had just gone through my first really severe bout with my eating disorder, and the only way that I can really describe as it relates to this food I'm talking about is there was this huge adjustment period where I actually had to kind of learn how to eat again. And I was being really careful about what I was introducing back into my system, because it had been so depleted for so long, and I knew how fragile it was. And it wasn't coming from a place of even whether or not it was nutritional value. My sole focus was more on whether or not my system was going to be able to tolerate it, and whether or not it was going to make me sick. So I found this dairy-free, gluten-free Thai frozen dinner. It sat well with my stomach. I didn't have any issues with it. It had really good flavor. It gave me, you know, it was a pad thai would be something that I might order if I was out at a restaurant. It's one of my favorite dishes. And so it really not only suited me in the time when I discovered it and I started eating it, I really, to this day, I love it. And so that stays. I have, you know, a pile of my pad thai, I have my frozen pizzas, and I have another one made by the same company that's also gluten-free, but it's kale macaroni and cheese. It comes in a single serving. It's delicious. It is so rich and creamy. The serving size is more than adequate. It's quite dense and quite flavorful. So I find I'm fairly satiated on just a regular, probably 8-ounce portion. But again, not. If I'm going to be eating things like cheese and milk, I want to buy actual cheese and milk and not be eating the processed food. Again, this would be a rice-based pasta, as with the pad thai and the rice-based crust from the pizza. And so all of those things in the next 3 months will be eliminated. Another thing that I really love, you'll notice a trend here, most of my carbs are rice-based. I have cream of rice cereal. It's like an instant cereal, like cream of wheat. It is absolutely delicious. I love a hot bowl of cereal. It's kind of like a lot of people really like a dish of ice cream or some kind of a dessert kind of a thing. It's definitely my bedtime kind of warm, cozy comfort food. And it usually has a little milk and sugar, a little coconut cream, a little maple syrup. It's always got, a little dash of salt. He's back. See, he went out the door and then he came back in the well, come here. Lodi. I'll see if he'll let me pick him up here in a minute so you can meet him. Anyway, so the cream of rice has to go. The other thing that most people know about me, speaking of being on a diet and reducing our carb loads and getting healthy, this is Lodi. He doesn't let me hold him for very long, so when he does, I like to take advantage of it. He's massive. He weighs 21 pounds. He's just a big old Tom. And yeah. And I have a golden retriever who's laying patiently. We'll be going for an evening drive here in a little bit. Okay, let's see if he'll let me. He probably won't stop meowing because I didn't give him what I want. I just gave him attention, and he doesn't want attention. He has food and water already. Chances are he wants me to open the door. He has a cat door. I'm a tool. He just uses me. So most people know me, know that I actually, even though most of my carbs are rice-based, I don't actually like rice. I don't like white rice. I don't like brown rice. I don't like any kind of rice. And that being said, last month I was making a rice dish for a client of mine, and the rice just turned out so incredible, and I just was like, that is the ticket. I know how to cook my rice now. I love this. Now I get it. I get why people love rice. So what did I do? I went out and bought the rice. I'm giving myself a 3-month window to eliminate carbs out. This is a very simple carbohydrate. It's very easy on my digestion, and this will probably go throughout that 3 months. It'll probably be one of the things. I can also prepare this the same way I do the cream rice. So again, the cream rice will probably get eliminated simply because I have this big bag of rice I need to use, and I can eat it with milk and sugar, or I can eat it savory with salt and meat and other dishes, or I can eat it sweet with just a little cream and sugar or something for my little evening snack. So I talked about the frozen foods. Oh, and then number 4 on the list. I only have 4, guys. I don't have bags of chips. I don't have bags of candy. I don't have jams and jellies in my refrigerator. I don't have I don't have any canned food. I don't have any jars of stuff. The things that are in jars are things that come, like my apple cider vinegar and things like that, but I don't have any processed food in jars. I do in my emergency backup pantry, the, shit hits the fan pantry. Of course, I have non-perishables in there and things that are kind of last resort, more survival type foods. And at that point, who gives a shit, right? So, I do have my wild rice. This will be the last carb to be eliminated from my diet, and this may never be eliminated. And again, health-wise, I should just look at this real quick if I can read it. I can't read it without my glasses, but very high, 7 grams of protein, and I believe 9 grams of fiber, and the total carbs, it looks like it's 18 grams or something like that. So if you know how to break that down and subtract the fiber from the carbs, and then include the protein in that, and then the idea that this is a whole unprocessed food that I prepare from scratch at home, this is hitting that its only deficit is that it has a carb count. Other than that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. And this will be the last thing to go out of my pantry if I end up going carb free, completely carb free. We talked about rice, pasta, and noodles. This is another one I just picked up the other day. These are, I may have already said this, my battery went dead and I had to start this over again. These are mung bean noodles, and they're just like clear cellophane, and they're really tiny. These are way smaller than angel hair, and when you cook these, they actually become about the size of angel hair pasta, and these soak up your liquid like you wouldn't believe. I don't know where the volume is going, but if you put 2 of these in a quart of water, you will have a bowl of noodles. You won't have to strain them. They will soak up every last drop of water. And you basically drop them in. They only take a few minutes to cook. They seem to stay al dente. They're not nearly as finicky as, regular pastas are. Bread isn't a thing for me. Bread isn't, with the discipline of not having wheat in my life, I never really went out and looked for alternatives. I just eliminated those things. I eliminated potatoes from my life because they, not only are they a simple carbohydrate, but they're also, they can cause inflammation. They're in the nightshade family. So, and for those of you who pay attention to that, I actually learned that early on from my mom. And then over the years, of course, I've done my own research, and of course they do fall in the nightshade family, and we have sensitivities to those things, and the result is inflammation. So potatoes haven't been a part of my life. Pasta has not been a staple in my house. Bread is not a staple in my house. So basically the list I just gave you, what was that, 5 items, I think. I have 3 frozen foods. I eat microwave popcorn, which the microwave popcorn and the cheese pizza will be the first 2 things to go, because I don't even eat the popcorn if I don't have a microwave. It's something I can eliminate, out of sight, out of mind, and I can get over it fairly quickly. And then the frozen pizzas, probably just because they're, even of my convenience foods, are probably the least go-to. They're kind of at the bottom of the list. If I'm choosing pad thai or macaroni and cheese or a pizza, it's going to probably be in that order. It's going to be pad thai, and then the macaroni and cheese, and then the pizza. So moving those in reverse, I just think about, what's my go-to, what's my go-to, what's my go-to. So, and then as far as the popcorn, one of the things that of course is just, it's not just the flavor and the experience of eating the popcorn, but it's also the idea that, you make this big bowl, you're gonna sit down, maybe watch TV or do something, and you're gonna sit and you're just gonna kind of chow and graze on this crunchy, salty, greasy, good food. Well, as I transition over to more of the keto disciplines, I talked in a previous video about how the leafy greens are so important. So when I do my bone broth, I'll be incorporating things like the leafy greens rather than the noodles or the wild rice. And it'll turn into more of, I mentioned this, I referenced this earlier, but it turns into kind of a peel a pound. So it's basically all your vegetables that you have to incorporate in to be successful can kind of go in the pot with your bone broth, and then it becomes just a ketogenic staple. You're getting your vegetables, and you're getting fat content, and you're getting a really solid protein base. It's just a all-rounder. It's really good. But if I don't want to cook those vegetables, then that big popcorn bowl turns into my salad bowl. And in my salad bowl, I use a variety of greens, whatever I'm feeling that day. You know, mixed springs. Sometimes it's romaine, sometimes it's cabbage, sometimes it's, you know, leafy green. It doesn't matter. As long as they're leafy greens and I am consuming them. So that becomes my popcorn bowl. And I still get to put oil on it. I still get to put salt on it. I still get to season it and flavor it to a certain degree how I want to. It's still giving me that high volume, crunchy, kind of stab it. I can be kind of, you know, that mindless grazing feeling. I've just replaced it with either the soup or the salad, so most of my veggies. So the popcorn isn't going to be that big of a deal. It's more the habit around it that I'm going to miss, and I have a replacement for that. So anyway, that's my game plan so far. I am in, it's the end of January, and I would say I'm officially in week 1. And just for reference, I don't make New Year's resolutions, and it's not necessarily because of where we're at in the year as much as where we're at in the season. You know, the days are going to get longer, our activity's going to go up. Odds are we're going to maybe shed a few pounds just because of lifestyle changes. We won't be quite as sedentary. We'll be outdoors more, getting fresh air more. The days get a little longer. So you stay out a little later, wake up a little earlier, and your natural level of activity will naturally increase as the season changes. And so I'm just using that to my benefit. If I'm doing a lifting program and I'm using something such as a carb backload program, which I've mentioned before, and I might walk through that with you guys. I might do a series like this one, but based on the carb backloading discipline. But the reason I mention that is because that would be more of a fall winter discipline when the days are getting shorter, not quite as high of activity level, not spending quite as much time outside, a predictable increase in calories based on anything from holidays to just maybe craving more comfort style foods, and it would be a time of year when it might be harder to follow a low carb lifestyle. And so it's a way where you can still have all of those things and you don't feel like you have to either make sacrifices or cheat on like Thanksgiving or Christmas, or when all of these extra things are around that aren't really in your mainstream lifestyle. But you know, there's just occasions where things like that come up. So that's why I'm referencing the time of year and why I'm choosing. So I'm hoping by April Fool's Day, I'm going to be as close to ketogenic as I'll probably get all year. Whether that means I've gone all the way and I'm in ketosis, or whether that means I'm down to, wild rice and a few of the disciplines that I've already talked about here. We'll see. My overall goal is to just feel better in general. And honestly, as far as, I don't know, what I see in the mirror or self-image, it falls pretty low on the list of motivations, but what I can tell you is I prefer if my thighs don't chafe when I wear shorts. I would prefer if my boobs would actually stay in the bathing suit that I'm wearing. I would prefer not to have my ass widen by 3 inches every time I sit down. So, there's just some things that I just know are going to make my summer better. And those warmer months and the changes in wardrobe and the activity level and all of those things, I'll just be so much more comfortable and able to participate and enjoy all of those things if I can just, dial this back a little bit. I've told you about the list of things that I'm going to have to eliminate out of my diet, and based on where most people are, I would say, when I initially integrated the ketogenic diet into my life, like I said before, I was going through a phase where I was actually learning just to incorporate food back into my system, and probably overly paranoid, but it was my hang up. Was that I was just afraid that my system was so sensitive. I was very strict, dairy-free and vegan for the first few months. I actually started with the wild rice and the lentils. I found the dairy-free, gluten-free, frozen item. So I was coming from a deficit, and I was actually building and trying to maintain a healthy weight. And the reason that I was interested in the keto diet at that time was, again, because it was based on an anti-inflammatory response. And my number one fear at the time, and with my illness and the psychosis that went along with my eating disorder, was that whatever I ate was going to really make me sick. And I was so paranoid. And the ketogenic diet gave me that little switch in my mind to be able to say, okay, well, it's saying it's specifically designed to not make me sick. Because it wasn't about weight control at that point, and it wasn't about, looking pretty in a outfit, or, my pants weren't too tight. It's, so many reasons that it wasn't because a doctor was telling me to. And so for that reason, so I'm also about halfway between my smallest and my heaviest. I'm sitting right at a very comfortably plump mid-range. And like I said, my goal is only to reduce I'm basing my goal of losing approximately 1 to 2 dress sizes not on how I want to look in the mirror, but based on predicting what my results will be from the practices that I'm putting into place. I know that I can just expect that to happen, and that is entirely realistic, and I'm not fighting for it. And there isn't really a downside at this stage. If I was going to weigh myself, I would say from now to full ketosis, if I chose to do that, I would probably max out at probably a 20-pound weight loss, and I would probably lose 2 sizes. And but more so than that, those are both indicators that I'm on the right track. It means that my inflammation is going down. I'm not in dis-ease. I'm not in discomfort. My digestion is on track. My biome's where it needs to be, and my overall general health is going to be impacted so much more than that number on the scale. All that number on the scale does is tells me that it's an indicator that I'm achieving other goals. So it's not the number one motivation, and it's not a goal to change not one number to another number. And that's really helpful, because that's stressful. Just a note on that, there's been so many, it's been my experience too. You go to the doctor, doc's like, hey, let's run your labs, let's see what's going on, and doc comes back, says, you need to lose a few pounds. Okay, well, what do you think? I don't care what number that doctor gives you. He's going to give you a number. He's not going to tell you how to achieve that. And he's going to want to see you in 3 months. And he's going to weigh you again, and you're going to evaluate. My recommendation, if weight loss is absolutely your goal, and I believe any physician would verify this, really practically and realistically, if you want to be successful, and it's not really about the volume of weight you lose, it's about consistently lowering that number. So that being said, my point is, if your doctor tells you that you need to lose 30 pounds, if your doctor tells you you need to lose 10 pounds, if your doctor tells you you need to lose 50 pounds, it doesn't matter what that number is. Your formula, your golden ratio, is going to be approximately 4 to 5 pounds per month. It's going to be approximately 1/2 to 1 full pound a week. And the reason that I want to point that out is because there's times when, like I said, I've used several different disciplines, and ask me, I'll tell you what my experience is with any number of disciplines. After my son was born, I had 60 pounds to lose, and I just watched what I ate and made sure I was active, and it worked. But my entire incentive was just to lose the excess body weight. It didn't have anything to do with being anti-inflammatory. It didn't have anything to do with wanting to build my overall general health. It was just strictly that number. and I lost 5 pounds a month for a year. I lost 60 pounds in a year. People say, well, that would take forever. Well, where are you going to be in a year? I mean, what else are you doing? You can't apply yourself enough to do this. You know, you're not making a year commitment, you're making a 1 week commitment. And within that 60 pounds, I could go from losing a couple ounces. There were a couple times when the number wouldn't change. So I didn't lose any weight and I didn't gain anything and the number wouldn't change. And I would take that as a win. That was okay. And there were times when it might only be 4 or 6 ounces, and there would be times when it might be a pound and a half. And what I learned over that year is that your body's going to fluctuate on its own a lot of times regardless of what you're doing. And so you weigh yourself and you say, oh, I only lost 6 ounces this week. I'm going to be just a little more strict. I'll just tweak it a little bit. And then the next week you notice did a little better and you still only lost the same amount, or maybe that week you didn't lose anything at all. You just have to remember, don't change if it number doesn't change on the scale, don't change what you're doing in real life. Just give it another week and you go back, and a lot of times you'll accumulate maybe a little over a pound, and you just kind of reflect back and say, oh yeah, but I didn't lose any that week. And you know, your body will fluctuate and adjust to a certain degree. And so that's why I don't put a huge emphasis on the number on the scale, and I know that I have to do this slowly and that it's incremental. This is not agonizing. It's just not. You're not being deprived. You won't be working from a deficit. And implementing these things in your life you'll just notice. So for some of the practices, it's within days. Sometimes it takes maybe a week or two. But I just know that this is my baseline and this is what works for me, and so that's what's happening. Thanks for listening, and I'll probably pick this up next week, and we'll see where I'm at and what worked for me and what didn't, and see you guys soon.